The music's on, the disco ball has dropped, and it's time to get this party started. You're listening to episode 11 of DiscoTrek, a Star Trek Discovery After Party podcast here on the Tricorder Transmissions Network. I'm your host, Heather Barker, who is not as sick this week as I was last week. And with me at the turntable is my favorite Gorn, the one and only Jeff Hewlett. Hi, Jeff. Are you sick?
No. Amazingly, I am not sick. And I've stealthily avoided it because everyone in my office is sick. I work in a cubicle C, and there were a cacophony of coughs and sneezes coming from all the cubicles around me for the last couple of weeks. And somehow, and I'm cursing myself by saying this, I didn't get it yet. So be prepared for me to be sick next week.
Well, good luck to you. I am setting this aside. This is my pre-con crud. I will get sick now instead of getting sick in 6 months or something after STLV. Well, so we are here tonight to talk about Star Trek Discovery. Tonight we'll be discussing episode 11, The Wolf Inside. With us tonight are two members of the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas convention group, which is the exclusive way to gain admission onto the show. Our first guest is they're both Star Trek family, although the second guest hasn't made it to STLV yet with us, but our first guest, with us. But our first guest is Marty Allee. Marty, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you for entering our little contest, and we're so glad that you are one of the winners. So as you guys already heard, our other guest is Seth T. Walker. He will make it to STLV and into the Star Trek. He's already part of the Twitter STLV family. But
it's a great Twitter family too. Unbelievable.
Yes. Someday you will make it to the convention. And
yeah, again, I was there in 2007.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you were there before I was there, which is a while ago.
That makes me OG somehow. Wow.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes. Way back before. Okay, we're going to hop into our discussion of episode in just a minute, but first we have some announcements from the DJs. That's Jeff and me. As we mentioned, DiscoTrek is a community-focused podcast evolved from our desire to give fans in our convention community a way to talk about Discovery. To join us on the show, make sure you're a member of the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas convention group on Facebook. Once you do that, we will post every week, usually on Tuesday, with a DiscoTrek image and information about the week's recording time. Just comment on that and you will be entered. We will use a random generator to pick the two winners the following Saturday. Once you've been on the show, you can't be back on the show, but there are still ways to be part of the discussion. Jeff, do you want to tell people how they can do that?
Sure, there's a couple of ways. Of course, you can engage with us on Facebook in the convention group or on Twitter at disco_trek and send us your feedback and we can read it on the air. Or you can call us at area code 609-512-LLAP and leave us up to a 2-minute voicemail that we can play on the air. So we would love to hear from you. So feel free to use any of those methods and we'll get you on the show.
Pretty cool.
What about our mirror selves? Can our mirror selves get on there a second time?
Only if you have a goatee.
But I have one on my normal one.
All right, then only if you shave your goatee.
Ooh.
Deal.
Oh. All right.
I'll grow one if you shave one. How's that?
Love
A
it.
challenge coin. There you go.
So we cannot have our show without our Patreon family. We've gotten some new patrons this month, I guess. It's hard to believe it's the new year already. Jeff, do you want to tell people a little bit about Patreon?
Absolutely. So, yeah, as you mentioned, we have two new patrons, Trekkie Rob. Thanks for supporting us. We were familiar with you from Twitter, and we're so glad to see you supporting us. And a new second one that I don't think either one of us are familiar with, Lou Perlinsky. If you're out there, Lou, and you're listening to us, let us know who you are. We would love to talk to you, and thank you so much for your extremely generous pledge. We're very, very, very happy to see that come through. Thank you. And as mentioned, we do have a Patreon page for those of you who aren't supporters yet. You can find it at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions or by visiting our website and clicking on the Patreon link. You can get to us at the tricordertransmissions.com or shoreleavepodcast.com. So if you enjoy what we do here on DiscoTrek or any of our other Tricorder Transmission shows, please consider joining our Patreon family. Becoming a patron will give you instant access to our unedited episodes right after we record them. Often material that is not included in the edited versions will be included in the unedited version. So for instance, this show that you're listening to right now, if you're a Patreon supporter, you could have listened to days before and you would have heard many more things at the beginning and the end of the episode than you would have in the edited version. So big benefits there. So thanks to all of our Patreon patrons. We love all of you guys, and we look forward to some more of you out there becoming our patrons.
As we say, what happens in the Patreon club stays in the Patreon club.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, well, we're almost ready to talk about the wolf inside. But first, please keep in mind that from this point forward, there will be spoilers. So if you haven't watched the episode, you don't want to listen to this one, stop what you're doing, go watch it, get with us, come back, because we're going to spoil all of it. Our show is a general discussion about the episode. We like to have a nice organic discussion, but it is segmented. We have Drop the Record, which will be our opening remarks and reactions to the episode, Play a New Track, where we explore what we learned, what's new about Star Trek universe, and Spin It Again, our look back at standout moments, scenes, characters, just about anything that you feel is worth a second glance. So I don't even know where to begin with this episode, but let's go ahead and drop the record. Let's talk about our opening remarks and reactions. Marty, what did you think about the wolf inside?
Oh man, there's so much to say about this episode. Michael Burnham is just having a very terrible day. I think anytime I have a bad day, I'm going to go back and listen to this episode. I mean, it just like, it all comes down on her, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Man, just one thing right after another. I thought the production quality of this episode was the best I've seen in this season so far.
Yeah.
Every shot in this episode just had this like slow kind of camera, like either zooming in or backing up. And there was always something like in the center of the frame. It was interesting to look at. And I'm glad we got to see some like slow-mos of the areas of the ship, because I know we've all been dying to look at that. But man, I also thought this was the most Trek episode that we've had so far. Michael Burnham talks a lot about trying to find a peaceful solution to the Klingon War.
Yeah.
And Saru's speech near the end of the episode was just the epitome of what Starfleet stands for. So
you would not be alone. I think that on After Trek, which I'm still waiting for my free month of CBS All Access After Trek.
We requested that last week.
Yeah. Ted Sullivan. I keep wanting to call him Ted Carter Hall because his Twitter handle is Carter Hall. Ted Sullivan said that he also felt this was the most Star Trekiest of the episodes. And that made me laugh because Jeff is always saying Star Trekky. And I was like, he must be listening to DiscoTrek. But anyway, for sure. So Seth, what did you think?
Well, I have similar thoughts. I thought this is a really good episode. I have never really liked mirror episodes. I liked the Enterprise mirror episodes. So getting to have so much fun in mirror episodes has been refreshing and something that I really enjoyed, because I was a little bit, Frakes kind of ruined the surprise by letting us know that there was quote unquote a mirror episode, and everybody was tracking when his episode was coming. And I, that was a little bit of a bummer, because I am one of the people who would not have picked mirror episode out without his help, for sure.
Yeah.
But once it happened, I mean, last episode I think was my favorite one of the whole season, minus of course the worst thing that has happened. And then this episode just kind of kept it going. It was a fun exploration. It was great to see the other aliens. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Andorians. My Twitter picture is of Shran.
Let me stop you right there. But what did you think of this, like, I don't know, this like buff and like the voice for this guy just really threw me off.
His name is Shukar, by the way.
Yes, I did write that in my notes.
Yeah, he does have a crazy voice. Like you could tell they did some sort of
it was super deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Like,
and it had other levels to it, like the Klingons.
I felt like he was an Andorian on steroids.
His skin was extra blue too. It was not blue like the Enterprise color. It was
they were
blue.
very different from the Enterprise for sure. Like you could tell their antennae didn't have a ton of movement, but they did have movement for sure.
Yeah.
I missed all the antenna movements.
I did too.
Yeah, there's a couple points when they're talking to him. I think when they say when Michael Burnham is talking to Voq and asking how she got, he got a willful Andorian. At that point, it turns to Shakur, and his little antennae poke up a tiny bit. So he does have movement there, and there's a couple other scenes where it moves, but it's nowhere near the Enterprise Jeffrey Combs level of movement. And the blue, you're right, it felt more translucent blue to me.
I don't necessarily want to see a lot of other Star Trek characters in Discovery, but like the smallest bit of me like really wanted it to be Shran. I don't know why. He's my favorite Andorian. But I thought they were really well done. I mean, this is pretty much, the new makeups that we've seen for a while now, between the Andorian and the Tellarites. So I was impressed. I know there's been some mixed review of Tellarites, I guess, since they look a little bit different.
I really like the Tellarites in this episode. I thought the old Tellarites looked very comical. Like,
Enterprise did a good job of kind of bringing some realism to the old TOS Tellarites we saw in Babel, I think. But what they've done on Enterprise, on Discovery, I think, is they added, they look more like a boar type of pig than just a regular old pig man. I mean, I felt like the TOS pig and Tellarites looked like that episode of Twilight Zone where the girl she's all painted, she's got the the medical stuff on her throughout the whole thing, and they're calling her ugly, and then the whole twist is, oh no, she's beautiful, but this is an ugly world, and they find her ugly. And I felt like the Tellarites looked almost identical to those guys, and so giving them a little bit more pizzazz with the tusks and everything was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I really, really enjoyed them. Well, Jeff, what did you think?
Well, I have to admit that I went into this episode a little jaded from the last one. Anybody who listened to the last DiscoTrek knows that a lot of us had a tough time. With Culber's death, still kind of fresh in my mind, I think I might have been overly critical of this episode the first time through, and admittedly unfairly. So I like the direction that the episode took. Burnham's plan to save the rebels seemed really Starfleet to me. I was kind of glad to see some real Starfleet tendencies. There's almost a Kirk-like way to go about things. It was a good testament to her character overall. And the plan that she came up with to get the Defiant data back to Discovery was excellent. One of the things I didn't see coming in this episode, I was like, wow, awesome. I totally didn't get why she went up and punched him in the stomach, but now I really got it after that. But
neither did I.
Yeah, I totally didn't get it. But on the other hand, the episode also committed one of my television and movie cardinal sins, which I guess I'll save for a little bit later. Isaacs is totally selling the tortured Lorca. I loved how he portrayed a Lorca who's been in the agonizer chamber for an untold number of hours and feeling those after effects that really, really came through. And as you guys already mentioned, Burnham's conflict with her place in the mirror universe, her role, is so visible and well executed by Sonequa. It was amazing. And I have to say also, Tilly's true talents finally shine in this episode for me.
Yes.
This, to me, was Tilly's strongest episode by far.
Can we give Tilly a promotion now?
Yeah, great evolution for her character. I mean, graduating from pretty much comic relief and some other little moments, but this was amazing. She put on display her incredible intellect and talents, her scientific abilities, unbelievable. So fantastic for her. Overall, I mean, suspending my frustration with the previous episode, this one was definitely solid my second time through.
It's a
Yeah.
tough one because the previous episode was amazing, except for
Yep.
that which we shall not mention. I mean, and you guys covered it pretty decently in your last episode, so I'm not going to harp on it. But I felt the same way, where it's like I want to unabashedly say that was my very favorite, but then it's like, yeah, but also the thing that was the worst that has happened all season happened there.
Yeah. And that's really where I am, because that episode was just, I mean, I was along for the ride basically, and I really hadn't been that engaged since Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, and then before that, Context is for Kings. Those are really my 3 episodes that have stood out so far. When I watched this episode, and I don't know if it was because I had my laptop open in my lap. So, I mean, I was paying attention to it, but by the end of the episode, I felt a bit underwhelmed. And I think that a lot of it was just actually that we had so many reveals that we already knew, or that were very predictable, let me say. I mean,
right.
we knew last week that the Ashes Voke was coming. We just didn't know when or how. So
I mean, we've known that since that episode he first showed up, when that fan rumor started going.
Well, yeah, but we've quote unquote known it. I mean, it's been like an actual fact since last episode. I mean, I agree with you. I've known it since Context, or since Choose Your Pain, because it was too perfect, and then everybody started talking, and then there was all of the actor stuff on IMDb, and by the next week I was 100% convinced. But it wasn't like the show hadn't decided to make it overly apparent, besides just dropping the trail of breadcrumbs last week when they did the voice.
Yeah, I mean, the whole season I've been pulling out the dialogue and all of the foreshadowing that really suggested what was going on. Jeff fought hard to believe that wasn't what was happening, but
it was a well-fought fight.
Finally have that reveal, and I mean, I don't know. I think that I liked the pre-reveal thing with the last episode better, with the interaction between Laurel and Tyler. I think I would have liked it more, maybe, if the trigger had worked then versus him seeing the mirror Voke. So this is my question, and I've got to come back to something else. But anyway, when we met Mirror Voke, he did not feel like Voke to me.
He didn't. I agree. I thought he was a different person playing him.
I thought it was a different actor. I mean, the makeup to me looked a bit different, and given Laurel has changed over the first, 10 episodes that we've seen her across. But I thought that he looked a little different. His demeanor was very different. And
he was also speaking English too.
Yeah, I think that's probably a huge part. It was the language too. We've never heard him in anything but the Klingon with the multiple, vocal cord intonations.
Yeah,
that's how.
On my second watch through, I realized it was because he was speaking English and not all the Klingon words.
Right.
Because when Shazid is speaking Klingon as Ash Tyler, it sounds just like Vogue. But when Vogue is speaking English, it sounds like a mix of the two.
That must have been what it was, because I just had this weird disconnect. Like, is it actually Shazad playing that Vogue too?
But they did have some pretty convincing stand-ins. If you pause it after when Vogue picks Ash Tyler up off the ground after their fight, they stand and they face off for a minute, both of them in frame, and then Vogue pushes him. And I was freeze framing through all that to try to look at their faces. And I don't know if they did that with special effects, or if the Vogue stand-in just looks that much like Shazad Latif, because it's really well done right there. You can't tell.
Well, it's probably him, and I mean, I assume in that there's probably a stand-in, but I'm sure that it was him playing Vogue too. I looked it up on IMDb, and it didn't say anything specific. So before I forget, I have to I was going to tweet this and I realized that it would have been a spoiler. But again, After Trek, I feel like I should have like a little $sign every time I say After Trek. Like, seriously, at least have me on the show, guys. I promote the show because we learn these fun little tidbits. And Ted Sullivan, Mary Shifo, and then Shazad Latif were guests on the show. And Shazad actually revealed that Javad Iqbal, which was the name of the actor playing Voke, is actually his father's name.
Yeah.
And that they had asked him like to come up with a name to put on IMDb or whatever for that actor. And so he picked his father's name. His father died about 5 years ago. So I thought that was a really sweet tribute and just kind of a neat little fact. But, when we're talking about the reveal of all of this and how it was, we all knew it was coming. I got into a discussion. This is kind of off topic, so bear with me. But I was reading comments on Twitter this morning and talking about like, would we have figured this out if not for social media? Like if I was just watching at home alone, would I have figured everything out? And it's tough for me to say. I did a Twitter poll, and right now, like 56% of people say that yes, they would have figured it out on their own. And about 44% say that no, they wouldn't. And a lot of people said that they probably would have, but just maybe not as quickly. So I just think it's interesting because, this is the first Star Trek that we've had such influence from social media.
Right.
As in learning these things. And I think that, for me, as I said, the first viewing was just a bit underwhelming, not just because of the Ash Vogue thing, but then, the big reveal at the end with Empress Georgiou. And even one of the, oh gosh, I should have written his name down. I think he was one of the writers on this episode. This episode was actually written by a woman, ding ding, Lisa Randolph. But this other guy whose name I forgot, sorry guys, he tweeted that like be prepared for the final scene of this episode. And in that tweet, he doesn't really reveal, what's specifically going to happen. But given that it was this, we all knew it was going to be another Mirror episode, and we all were kind of going there, at least most of the people I know were leaning towards it being Georgiou. I think that some people thought like that, oh, maybe it'll be Cornwell, maybe it'll be Culber, which got debunked in After Trek last week.
I think Georgiou was the most obvious choice, honestly, because, you come onto the bridge of the Shenzhou in the Mirror Universe, no one even mentions Georgiou at all, period. So
exactly,
that was a big tell right there. They mentioned just about everybody else, but they never mentioned her. So that when she appeared at the end, I was like, oh, okay, exactly what I was expecting.
I think even though we knew she was going to be in the last scene as the Emperor, I was still impressed by her acting and the way she presented herself.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. I think that everybody's been doing a great job. I think that it's a combination of the social media world and just some of the choices being a little obvious. I don't want to get too negative, but this is the episode that I've heard the most, as I put it on Twitter earlier today, loving constructive criticism from some of the most diehard fans of Discovery so far. And a lot of it has been around choices for stuff like this, because I don't know if I would have known Georgiou was going to be the Emperor if they hadn't said so many times in interviews and After Trek that we're going to see more of her. We're going to see more of her. And they said it with more passion than just for me to believe that the holograms are going to be it. But on the flip side, I think that even without that information, some smart people, not me, would have been able to figure out that it was Georgiou. When it comes to Ash being Vogue, I know for a fact I would have picked up on that without social media's help. When it comes to Georgiou, I don't know if I would have picked that one up. When it comes to some of the other ones, I'm not sure.
Yeah. It's
I'm
definitely interesting, the discussion going on online today, because I mean, I love the fact that we're getting one episode a week because I get to do a
I
podcast.
love it.
Like
it's great. Yeah.
I love it.
if it were not being released weekly, we really wouldn't be here, nor would we just be talking. It's like the conversation's been had, like Stranger Things. Okay, it comes out, everybody talks about it for a week, and then it's over.
Yep.
Whereas we're constantly talking about Discovery. I do agree that there's, because it's serialized, it's definitely meant to be binge watched, and I think it's more enjoyable when it's been binge watched.
And the
But
way it's presented now, there's always something big to talk about every week.
yeah,
Like there's
and
always
Yeah.
some buzz online about, oh, guess what happened on Star Trek Discovery?
Yes.
it's both, I think, both a positive and a negative thing, because like a lot of people felt that, even before we saw this episode, they had released photos of the aliens. So like for me, there's Heather the podcaster that wants to be up to date on everything that's going on because I want to talk about it on the show. And then there's Heather the Star Trek fan that doesn't want to know any of this stuff. Like I just want to watch the
Yeah.
episode and be there for the ride. And so like part of me really kind of wishes, because I do this with a lot of films, like Star Wars films and stuff. I stay away from the trailers. If
Yeah.
it's something that I really want to see, I just don't engage. Whereas Star Trek, I'm like, it's my world. So no matter where I look, there's Star Trek. It's hard to avoid anything like that. But I mean, regardless, I'm enjoying it. And the second time that I watched the episode, I actually watched it with a friend, and it's the first time that he's like watched any of Discovery, and he's like likes Discovery, so it's really awesome. And so it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed the episode even more. And then watching it a third time today and taking notes, I think that this episode, for the amount of content that it had, I mean, there was so much. I mean, it's hard to even pull out character moments because we saw something from like every character.
Yeah, we really did. I like everybody.
Even
It's like-
Detmer. We got a lot out of
Yes.
Detmer this week.
Oh man, sorry to no, I'll talk about this later. My bad. Go on.
All right, put a pin in it. Put a pin in it, because I'll finish
Yes,
this.
let me take a note.
But I'm just the fact that we had so much in one episode, with the longest opening sequence in all of Star Trek history. We had almost 15 minutes of story before we got to the credits. I feel like this is probably the best episode of Discovery yet. It doesn't necessarily mean it's my favorite, but just the complete package at the end of the day. The writing in this was stellar. I mean, there was some beautiful dialogue in this. Again, the direction, the photography, the acting, and character moments. It's a really good episode. So I feel kind of, even though I was underwhelmed to begin with, at the end of the day, I'm really happy with what happened. So any final comments here, Seth? Did you want to bring up your point before we move on?
I'll bring my point up later for the play a new track, but I did have a comment regarding this episode and the I've lost my thoughts, so we can just clear this later. Never
Okay.
mind.
Put a pin in it, Jeff. Take that out. Marty, any final comments about opening reaction?
I mean, nothing that hasn't already been said before. It's so much.
Okay, so much. Jeff?
No, let's move on.
All right, let's pop in. Let's play a new track and talk about what we learned that's new in the Star Trek universe. Seth, are you ready to do this?
Okay, so when it comes to some of the new things, I definitely am curious about Detmer's uniform. She has a very unique uniform amongst all of the people that we've seen. She's got, when it comes to that gold diagonal sash type of
Yeah.
stripe, she has these little It looks almost like ammo. It's almost like she's wearing a bandolier, and nobody else is wearing that. And I'm trying to figure out, is that like a first officer's thing, or is
Yeah.
that like a weapons officer thing?
I assume that it's first officer because we definitely learned that she's first officer, which I
Yeah.
thought was pretty amazing because, again, this is a character that has been kind of like they've made a point to kind of show her off here and there, but she really hasn't had much dialogue or much to do. And now here she is as the first officer. Marty, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that the captain has the gold kind of armor plating. So it would make
Right.
sense that the first officer would also have something to sort of let the rest of the crew know that they're in charge. Maybe not as lavish as the gold, but
Yeah, just something to put them over the top. And I guess they just didn't do
Yeah.
that on the Discovery because they didn't really define the second officer because, Captain Killy's really a cadet. And I think that's just a little screwy over there.
Who is
Yeah.
the first officer in Mirror Discovery? Do we know?
I
No.
don't think that's been covered. Yeah, no, because Tilly's the top, and then who would normally? I don't even know who the second officer is on the ship. I mean, on the USS Discovery.
That's true. We don't know that.
Yeah, I don't know who. I mean, who takes the bridge when Saru and Lorca aren't there?
Oh, I think it's
Trying-
that background bridge character. that
Ariam?
Oh, the
Ariam.
robot. Yeah,
Ariam.
Yeah.
It's Ariam.
we haven't seen her in the Mirror episodes at all. I don't think.
I don't know. Not on another ship. Because I mean, the actual Mirror Discovery is in the Prime universe right now.
Right. Doing
So,
something crazy, which
I
I
mean,
can't wait
she's-
till we find out about that.
Yeah. Which Ted Sullivan kind of was like spoilers, but then
Yep.
said he really didn't know. So it's like, are we gonna know, or was he just kidding?
That makes me what? No,
He's trying to
never mind.
throw us off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Anything else besides that?
Well, I think that it's pretty evident that Lorca still is hiding some very, very big secrets, and his motives are not. I don't think that we really. I have a theory on what his motives are, but I don't think that's been revealed yet. And I
Go
do think
for
that
it.
he likes the agonizer chamber a little bit. I think that's kind of. I mean, you see him afterwards, and he looks like he's a cold swimmer out of a pool, but he doesn't look miserable. I mean, my theory is that he killed Burnham, and he's from the Mirror Universe. First of all, that's my crux. He killed Burnham in the Mirror Universe, just like they thought happened, like the historical documents of the Mirror Universe show, and then he tried to take over I mean, she was after him because he was trying to take over the Empire. I've heard people say that since he was a rogue officer and he tried to perform a coup against the Emperor, that he's probably some sort of a good soldier, like a good guy helping the rebels. I don't think that's the case. I think he's just a human who wants to be in charge. And I think he went back to the normal universe to try to bring Burnham back so that he could have two ships. He could come back and use two ships to try to complete his plan.
Yeah, I wrote down one quote where when he was first talking with Burnham after she pulled him out of the agonizer, and he was basically saying, sometimes the ends justify terrible means, which sounds like the dark Lorca that we knew in the beginning. But I'm right there with Jeff as far as Jason Isaacs playing this character, having been in the booth. And man, so I went back and watched Mirror Darkly Part 1 and 2 from Enterprise, and sadly, Seth, I have to disagree with you. I hate those episodes. I think they're so cheesy and so bad. And I was watching the agonizer booth and how there's no effects at all, and it's just the person going ah. That was a really good impression.
I just like it because it's like a little bit of a vacation, I mean, there's no entering the universe, there's no exiting the universe. It's just like from the very beginning opening credits, it's all like, here's a vacation, take 2 episodes off, just have a fun trip in this other
I can
universe.
see that.
Maybe it's
think
just
the
that I
biggest
hated the DS9 one so much. I just really didn't
Ah,
like the DS. And don't get DS9 is like, it's always fighting for number one spot with TNG for me. So I love DS9, but I
yeah.
do not like their Mirror Universe episodes. It's one of my most cringe-worthy parts of DS9.
Hmm.
I love when Nana tells the story about her rubber suits at STLV.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
Squeak.
Squeak, squeak, squeak.
Well, I'm really glad that we've got some pretty. Oh, this sounds terrible, guys. I'm so glad that we have some really terrible agonizer boots in Discovery. I
They
love the.
look painful.
Yes, they look painful. They look intense, and Lorca, or Jason Isaacs, is definitely portraying the character correctly and someone that's been affected by being in there. I don't know about you guys. It seems like most of the people I know noticed at the end of the episode when Georgiou makes her appearance that they give that shot on Lorca's face and he kind of smirks.
He smirks. He totally did.
Yeah.
Because he's excited because they're going straight to the palace. He doesn't even need his ships. Like that's why he was protecting Burnham so much in the Prime universe, because he needed her to survive. It's like, why didn't he want to put her into danger when the only reason he got her was to stop the war? Because the only reason he got her was to get control of the Shenzhou.
Yeah. But I'm
convinced.
Like, I really I don't want this to be another thing that happens, because it's just something else that a lot of fans have been predicting for forever. That Lorca's from the Mirror Universe, and I think there are signs within the dialogue throughout the season that point in that direction, and
the scar.
Yeah,
the
it's
agonizer
not
scar.
going to be completely disappointed if it happens. It's just I want to continue to be surprised, but not by way of killing characters like we.
No, I think we might want to hold our expectations for surprise maybe for season 2. I think they're going to have to rethink it, because I really do think they put some. I think they're having a hard time. I think it's a hard thing to do in general, to walk the fine line of making a really good serialized show that comes out on a weekly basis, because you have people who have, hundreds of thousands of hours combined of all the fans' effort each week put onto each episode, and it's hard to if you drop any breadcrumbs, people are going to start picking that up and start figuring it out. And I think that that's what's happening here, is that some of the breadcrumbs are larger than others, but
Yeah.
I think they would work better in a quieter, more contained environment, or with less time between the two. But I like the weekly format. I think it's just going to be difficult, and I think maybe they're going to have to retool their writing for season 2.
I think they've underestimated the Star Trek fans in the digital age and how much we dissect each episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Marty, what about you? What did you learn that's new about the Star Trek universe in this episode?
I think we learned a lot about the Terran Empire and the Rebel Alliance, quote unquote Rebel Alliance, in this episode.
Rebels.
It plays out like a Star Wars movie, doesn't it? Like
it does.
The Big Bad Empire, and
yeah.
I mean, I have two things: active camouflage. I don't think we've seen that before in Star Trek, which was really cool to see. And bathtubs just plopped right in the middle of the room there.
Those are by far the nicest captain's quarters I've ever seen.
That was the coolest bathtub I've ever seen. It had like the little blue light at the bottom, and
those two things are like actually my same mentions for this. But yeah, I was like, man, I could go for that bathtub. I don't know that I would want someone bathing me, but I definitely
certainly not the mirror version of your first officer.
Yeah, I mean that.
But my God, Doug Jones is really doing. I mean, just you see him within 5 minutes of his 2 different roles, and he is so vastly different. I love that guy.
I thought they just did a really good job with this. I mean, I'm sad that in the Mirror universe, Kelpians are slaves, and that line, "A slave has no name." Very Game of Thrones, by the way.
I was about to say.
A girl has no name. But yeah, so it's I was just, and again, this is why this episode it has so much, because here we have not just, Mirror Saru, the Kelpian slave, who then Burnham slips and calls him Saru and then covers for it, who winds up saving her from Voke towards the end of the episode, which was just super awesome and great. And I loved, personally, just having seen this struggle between Burnham and Saru, I love the fact that the Mirror Saru came to her rescue.
Yeah, it was a great moment.
We've got, aside from this, there's the whole Saru Tilly story arc, which is really sweet. Because being a superior, Tilly, winds up asking if he would refer her for the program that I didn't write down what it was. But their interaction was really nice. Then we have the very real point that Saru and Burnham are still keeping secrets from each other.
Yeah, I'd like to know you guys' takes on why Burnham didn't tell Saru about another Kelpian. That makes no sense to me.
I think she just didn't want to let him down, because I think he was hopeful that they had a place in this universe, and for her to tell him that, no, sorry, your species is still downtrodden and frowned up,
A slave.
I think she didn't want to let him down. She couldn't stand to break his heart.
Yeah.
Especially because she's already having the worst day ever,
That's what I took from it. And then at the same time, I understood Saru not telling her about Culber for the same type of thing, although,
it just shows how much their relationship has progressed over the season. Now they actually care about each other's feelings, whereas at the beginning they really didn't.
It's true, but at the same time, I feel like they should have communicated. It's a tough spot.
Yeah.
I more understand why Saru didn't want to tell Burnham, because that's a lot of emotional baggage to put on her where she is. I think that if at that point they're convinced that Stamets killed Culber. There's no question that
Jeff called, by the way. I just have to give Jeff credit here, because look, I will admit right now that I just kind of assumed for some reason that they had video camera or
you would think they'd have security footage, especially in sickbay.
I assumed that they would know, and then so did my friend that was watching with us. He said the same thing. He's like, I just assumed that they would know, and I was like, nope, Jeff called that.
So where are the cameras that Mudd was seen on? What happened to those? They just didn't have them in the medical.
Just conveniently not there. Conveniently not there for this episode. But yeah, I had to take out that minute to props to Jeff there for calling it.
Thanks, Heather.
Good work.
Seems to be a common problem in Star Trek, where they just forget things that exist. In TNG all the time, they're always like, "Oh, too bad we don't know what their intentions are." And it's why don't you go ask your empathic counselor, who's not in this episode?
Just conveniently forget about that stuff for that time. Well,
yeah. Okay, I was going to say this one would have been more believable if we hadn't had a whole episode where we saw him on them use the cameras multiple times, because we've never really seen a camera on board a starship in any of the shows. So it's okay, they just don't have them, as weird as that is. But then Mudd shows up.
At the end of the day, because it's not necessarily quite believable that they turned a Klingon into a human either. So let's just. Again, as much as I also can't really believe lots of things in science fiction, everyone. Okay. My last thing about Saru, I have to shout out to my friend Alex Perry, because he actually wrote down the quote for me, so that I just had to go to Twitter and find it. But again, we mentioned earlier Saru's line towards the end of the film, or the end of the film. Listen to me, guys.
It felt like a film. It was so
really
beautiful.
did. Seriously.
Yeah. That was a great one.
They beam Ash Tyler Voke back over to Discovery after he's been beamed into space to die. And Saru tells him, "We are stranded in a cruel anarchic world, but we are still Starfleet. And we still live and die by Federation law, no matter how heinous your crimes." Just phenomenal. So, again, like so much in this episode from Saru. Just so much from everybody. Jeff, what about you? Since Marty got my points. So
Sorry, Heather.
It's okay. Did you have anything different from what we've said?
Well, your last statement in that quote is a perfect segue into what I was going to throw out there. A couple of things that I was going to bring up were already brought up, but I think my biggest takeaway from this episode is, and I don't know, I can't process this because I don't know if this was the intention for us to take this away from this episode or not, but the fact that the non-human races in the Mirror Universe unite against a common enemy far, far better than they do in the Prime Universe says a lot. The fact that you have all of these races that are united against the Terran Empire and Starfleet in the Prime Universe can't get it together. It's not a like for like scenario on either side. You know, you don't look at Discovery and see all of those races united against the Klingons, right? Not all of the ships are coming together. Not all of them are cross-populated into one unified front against the Klingons. But in the Mirror Universe, they're all united against the Terran Empire. So that's kind of a weird indictment of Starfleet in the Prime Universe to me, at least at this point.
Let me ask you, because I feel like in the Prime Universe, the Federation is ostensibly, made up of all these races, so they are united against the Klingons.
Well, they're not very well represented.
Right. No, and I agree with you.
thing.
Like, as much as I loved seeing all the aliens on this episode, and I hate to use this word, but it felt almost a little cheap, because I would have rather my first vision of an Andorian been in a Starfleet uniform. Same with the Tellarites.
Yeah.
And I mean,
how many of those have we seen in any Trek series?
Zero Tellarites.
Exactly.
Zero Andor. We've seen Tellarites in the Enterprise Mirror Universe episode in Starfleet uniforms, but I don't think we've seen an Andorian or a Tellarite in a Federation uniform outside of that one Andorian admiral from one of the Star Trek movies, maybe 3. Search for Spock. Just he's in the background.
Movies. I feel like I've seen, and this is when I just wish I had everything in my head. I feel like we've seen somebody in one of the JJ movies, like an Andorian or something.
The thing that I noticed with the JJ movies is they don't seem to use recognizable aliens outside of the main characters. Like, I don't think I've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong on Twitter, everybody or anybody here, I don't think I've seen an Andorian in one of the Kelvin movies. I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, I don't know if I did either.
Well,
I think they're barely mentioned in background chatter. Like, if you watch it with captions on, you'll kind of pick it up. But other than that,
I mean, they did mention when we first met Dr. Culber, he said he had to go handle an Andorian tonsillectomy.
Oh, they've been teasing us. As a huge Andorian fan, I can tell you that nearly every episode, nearly every one, they have used the word Andorian and teased us in some way with the Andorian. So I've been waiting for the Andorian reveal forever. And again, it's like I loved seeing them and I thought they looked great, but I wish that I would have seen them in the Prime Universe first.
Yeah.
Because it feels like we get all this diversity of species, like you were saying, Jeff, here in the Rebel Alliance. And, you see them all and it feels like they're coming together to fight the evil empire. And I agree that if you just look at optics, it looks like the Prime Universe is humans versus Klingons. And, in the Mirror Universe, it's everybody versus humans. But I feel like it's just been an issue of optics, because they've talked about Tellarites, they've talked about Andorians, and ostensibly all these aliens are in Starfleet. We've seen a pretty decent amount of aliens on board Discovery, just nondescript. I don't know what that one is, or what the fly guy was, or the blue dude with the stuff on his ace. I mean, a whole bunch of aliens, but just not the ones that we know and love.
Those are also aliens who are in Starfleet prior to the Klingon War. So I think it's two different scenarios. I mean, I would think post start of the Klingon War, you would, if it was a direct parallel to the Mirror Universe, which clearly in Discovery, those two universes don't have to be like for like. There's been some hints in prior series that the Mirror Universe has a like for like relationship, just the opposite of the Prime Universe, but that's not necessarily the case in Discovery, at least. So
Right.
it's an interesting way to look at the Mirror Universe, because I may probably mistakenly thought about this as a quote unquote parallel universe where it is identical yet opposite, but clearly that's not the case, because we have people who are alive in one universe and not in the other. There's a little bit more of a gray area between these two.
Can I also say that did I miss where they integrated Ash Tyler into the Mirror Universe? Was he just supposed to be Burnham's consort? Because he was there, like...
Yeah, I don't think they said anything.
Yeah, it's like he was there, but then the entire, like, the new crew, like, it was just accepted that he was there. And I just thought that was kind of interesting, that here she was gone, and then here she's got this random personal guard that I guess she found on the planet.
Prior to beaming over to the Shenzhou, didn't they say she was, as a captain of her rank, she was entitled to a personal guard, and that's how she was playing off Ash Tyler?
Yeah.
Did she? I must have missed that. I must have missed that part.
I think in some ways the writers on Discovery don't underestimate the intelligence of their viewers, and they don't cover a lot of basic ground that we just assume happens. Like, I've heard people say, oh, but we never heard about Ash Tyler's, compatriot, his mirror person. And I think that they looked up the mirror person and they saw Ash Tyler, because Ash Tyler, as we learn later in the episode, is a real Starfleet officer. And so I think they looked him up, they just didn't mention it. Same thing with, when he gets brought onto the ship, they don't talk about all the tests that he went through. They just let us assume that he's going to go through these battery of tests. And I think that's kind of what happened here, is they're like, she's his guard. They're going to get the message over there, just trust that they're doing what they need to do to get him over. Otherwise, people would question why he's here.
Yeah.
So just assume they did it right. We don't need to fill you in on those details.
I'll take that. All right. Jeff, was there anything else?
Nope.
That was it. All right. There was so much. I thought that the beaming people out into space to kill them was interesting. I mean, at least that's a quick way to die, right? And then it was very convenient when they had to pop Ash Tyler out there.
That was a great surprise for me. I was expecting him to just be executed right there, and beaming him away, I did not see it coming.
I was the exact opposite. Exact opposite. I was yelling at the TV going, yeah, she's beaming him to Discovery. She's beaming him
that's what I thought too, that he was beaming her, that she was beaming him somewhere safe. But when you saw him, materialize in space, I was like, oh, he's done. Okay. And then they beamed him away, and I was like, oh, that is awesome.
Yeah. The friend I was watching with said that was like the one moment that really lost him, because he would have rather just seen him die. Like, at this point, like, have there be something unexpected, I guess.
It was so interesting because I sympathized more with Mir Vok than I did with Ash Tyler in this episode. Like, can we just take Mir Vok back with us?
Mir Vok is much more respectable and likable.
Mir Vok didn't kill Culber.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
yeah. So, and we didn't mention this, but we had the whole with the Tilly and Saru and Stamets arc that was going on. So Stamets died, which I knew was not going to be real. I'm like, they don't kill Culber and then kill Stamets the episode later. And so then he came back. And so now we've got Mirror Stamets and regular Stamets meeting in the mycelial network. Do we think that Mirror Stamets is the one that we originally saw in the mirror?
Potentially.
The one that was like, oh, Captain, what are you doing here?
No, you mean the mirror, the actual physical
bathroom mirror. The bathroom mirror.
Like was the one
about that.
Like, was the mirror universe Stamets that we saw in the mycelial network the same as the reflection that we saw in the mirror?
I always thought that was just some wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff.
I don't think so though, because Tilly hit us with a lot of techno babble in this episode
Yeah.
that I had a really hard time following. But if what the crux of what she was saying is that his brain is the portal, the tie between the two universes, and if that truly is the case, then the Stamets we saw in the bathroom mirror may very well be the Stamets of the mirror universe.
I think that it was. I think that the personality, and I mean, we didn't hear any words from the reflection in the mirror, but there was the smirk on that guy's face just aligned with the spunk that we got from this guy. So we know that Stamets is not dead. Thank God. I just held back a curse, guys. I will take that moment to say this small thing. My only nitpicks about this episode, number one, was I did not need to see the sex between Ash Tyler and Laurel again.
I thought of you immediately when that scene popped on. I was like, oh, Heather's not going to be happy with this.
I'm going to do everyone a favor right now and not talk about how much I really hate putting this in there, because that's going to be a whole other rant. And I'm having fun, so I don't want to rant about that tonight. But I said it last week, and that at this point, it's pretty obvious that the confusion that's gone on that sex scene just didn't need to be there. I did not need to see that again, so I really don't ever want to see it again. Number two, I did not need to see Culber's neck get snapped again.
I didn't either.
Like, seriously.
We had to see it twice too, because they do that whole last time on Discovery.
Yes. So it's like, there it is, and then it happens, and I was just like, great, really? But for an episode like this, like, those are my two small nitpicks. So it's not a lot. But
I think we're going to see a lot more of that mycelial forest. I believe that this epic love story that Aaron Harberts and everybody keeps consoling us is still happening, is going to be like a Ghost, like the movie Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, Ghost. And you were going to have Culber and Stamets hanging out in the... I couldn't figure out how they were going to have their interaction. I had a Star Wars Force Ghost in my head. But now that they've gone to the mycelial forest, I think that's where we're going to see scenes between the two.
It's definitely going to be something like that, because they said on DiscoTrek to read the actual Paul Stamets book about mycology and all that. And I'm just gonna wait and see. That's all. I mean, that's really all I can do. Like, everyone
I don't have time
knows,
to read his book.
yeah, everyone. No, I'm not going to read his book. Everyone knows how I feel. I feel the same way this week as I did last week. I'm glad that the character's not gone. I don't ever want to see his neck get broken again. And we'll just see where it goes. Okay, Jeff, was there anything else?
No, I'm going to save the rest for my lengthy spin it agains.
All right, so
I think we all have lengthy spin it agains.
Before we did this podcast, I was like, how are we going to fit this podcast into an hour and a half? And it's probably not going to be an hour and a half. So I hope you guys like listening to us. So let's go ahead. Let's spin it again and take a look back on our standout moments, scenes, characters, everything that we love about Star Trek Discovery. Marty, what do you got for us?
All right. First, that beauty shot of the ISS Shenzhou at the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We need more of those for the other ships we don't see as often.
Yeah.
Because I just want to look at them like up close, like once, one good look.
Star Trek characters are the ships. Ships are definitely characters in Star Trek universe. I have a wall full of ships, and I don't have a single action figure. I love the characters to death, but the ships are what I stare at. I'm looking at them right now.
I saw that the pictures of the ships that Eagle Mouse is releasing.
Oh, beautiful.
And I don't recognize half of them because we never got a good look at them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something I want to see more of in Discovery. I also liked the return of the captain's log at the beginning, and I loved that it was just very slow and kind of went along with what she was doing that morning. Standout line from that for me was the cosmos has lost its brilliance, and everywhere I look, there's fear, which I immediately thought of like the state of our country currently.
So how I took that, not to crush your dreams here, but I thought that was her conversation with Ash. Because it also like it definitely seemed to me like a log, but then like towards the end of it, it shows her talking with him. So I just
Yeah.
read that as all one big thing.
Did she say captain's log? Because I was about to say I've watched it twice today, and I didn't catch that it was a captain's log.
She may not have, but it was still the same feeling you get when
Yeah,
Captain Picard starts
absolutely.
the episode with a captain's log.
Yeah, I just accepted it because she does the logs. Like she does a lot of narration throughout the series, so I just sort of
Well, that's. I mean,
accepted it.
I thought of it the exact same way, and then I was like, oh wait, but she's like the way that she's talking to Ash, it's different. But I thought that like there was just something really special about it because of like how it was done. Because I also really like that, and I like the fact that like I think the first thing she said was, "I can't rest here." Like she can't find any peace there, and I thought that that was really powerful. And then I didn't write the note down, but she said something like that the people there don't really know the darkness that is waiting inside. Like that was like the last line she said when she was sitting in Tyler's.
Oh yeah, and then it cuts to her and Tyler.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, like that's such a great foreshadowing of the title of the episode with the wolf inside and talking about, you know, this darkness waiting inside. So sorry to steal the thunder there. But
oh no, you're fine. Don't worry about
it. That was a great moment that you pointed out, and something that I also had that I had to emphasize. So back to you, Marty.
I loved Michael Burnham's Sonequa Martin Green's acting. I thought she was like at the top of her game, especially when like Ash is trying to kill her, and she has this like heartbroken emotion on her face, and immediately has to stand up and dust it off as soon as Detmer walks in.
Yeah,
like no time to process that, and then goes to the bridge, turns around and sees Georgiou standing there, and just that look of shock on her face, like she didn't even know what to do.
Yeah,
and like carried that to the end of the episode.
I don't know about everybody else, but I feel like I think that okay, well, to be fair, I've only watched Sonequa Martin Green in Walking Dead, so I haven't seen anything else that she's done. But her acting in Star Trek Discovery is just like leagues above what she's done in Walking Dead, and
light speed ahead of everybody else.
Yeah,
it's all in her face. It's all in her face. Yeah.
Well, and then the intonation in her voice, like that. You know, again, yes, like that entire scene where she's just like, who are you talking about? Oh God, I'm gonna get emotional, like just thinking about it, because he's telling her, you know, like L'Orel's words tell me who I am and that I feel him inside of me and I feel his anger, and she's just like, who?
Yeah,
it was so good. It was so good.
Good.
I agree with what you're saying on all fronts, and especially what you're saying about her face. I mean, because she portrays such amazing emotions with that face. You know, take it back to last episode, the fight in the turbo lift with Connors. You know, you pause that when they're up at the top, when the gravity is gone. Both of them are brilliant, but she's got this little smirk where she's like, I know what's going on here. I got the gravity off. Connors looks terrified, and then she kills him, and she goes just into this heartbroken, like, oh my God, I have to watch you die twice. And then she turns and walks out of there like a boss. Like, I did this on purpose. Like, yes, he's dead. dispose of his body. I'm in charge. I mean, she's just.
Well,
And then this episode, yeah.
And then we can link that back to the really phenomenal writing where in the beginning of the episode she's saying, like, can you bury your heart? Can you disconnect from being a human being?
Oh, yeah, that was so good.
Yeah, to be this person. So again, it's just like I said this last week. I'm like, the more Discovery that we see, the harder it is for me to pick a favorite character. And it's always been so easy in every other incarnation of Star Trek. But to me, it's like, all right, last week it was Tilly. And this week it's Burnham again, because just this,
Discovery is more of an ensemble show than any of the other Star Treks have been. Because all the other ones, you always had like, oh, this is a Data show. Oh, this is a Worf show. Like it's always been one character show, and I feel like this one is more the entire cast.
And I think it has to be because of the serialization, and the fact that we're limited to 15 episodes, right, versus 26 or whatever. And so we don't get the opportunity to tell those character stories, which is something that I miss somewhat. But the fact that these actors bring so much, like all of these actors, because it's, not to like, I don't want to move on to anything, but it's not just Sonequa. Like we had great moments from Doug Jones. We had great moments from Shazad Latif. We had great moments from Jason Isaacs. Like this episode almost felt like a finale, or like leading into a finale, because it just had so many strong character points.
It could have been a cliffhanger.
That's not something that we typically see in a mid-season episode. So I'll stop talking now. Was there anything else, Marty, that stood out to you?
I like that we got to go on a little away mission.
Yeah.
And I thought the way they filmed that, like they arrive and they start getting bombed. And then you go to this little like camp, and the floor of the camp, which I learned on After Trek, was the floor that they used on the sarcophagus ship.
Yep. Cha-ching.
It's the same floor. Like beautiful.
Yeah, that was really, again, that's just why it's worth watching After Trek, to learn those little tidbits.
It's definitely worth watching After Trek.
Like another, like the regeneration chamber or life chamber or something from one of the episodes was in the background scene there that they repurposed.
Oh, they also switched around the ready room on the Shenzhou, and on the back wall, you have all the weapons that were in what's his name's like Chamber of Horrors.
Lorca's of Horrors.
Lorca's Menagerie.
I just, total side note here, but if they sell a Discovery Batleth, like I'm gonna have to buy it, because those things are beautiful. And I have a Mechleth. Like anybody that follows me on Shore Leave or my cosplay knows I do the Enterprise Augment. So I have a Mechleth. I do not have a Batleth, and I have not wanted a Batleth until Discovery Batleths, because those things are gorgeous. All right. Well, Seth, what about you? What do you have to call out for this episode?
Well, I've got quite a bit. I'll try to truncate it here, but just something we've already said. I really liked seeing the aliens that we've been missing. It was great to see. At this point now, we've seen every single founding species of the Federation. It was cool in the scene with Javad Iqbal and Shazad Latif when he was having his flashbacks as Takuvma was mentioning each of the races. It was showing one of them at the table. And that was really cool. So for people who didn't really know, they're like, oh, those weird pig guys are the Tellarites. Oh, okay. And Andorians are those blue dudes. I get it.
But that also just like, not to interrupt you, but that played so well, I thought, because here we had something from, I think, either episode 1 or 2, right? And that dialogue, and I mean, what he's saying then just ties so perfectly into what we're seeing in the mirror universe. I thought that was just so good, despite that this is where we're first seeing those aliens.
Yeah, I mean, your comment makes me. I'm going to skip a couple and go to what I was saying, that the writing is amazing, top notch in here. I'd said earlier that they're going to have to retool it for season 2, and I don't mean in any way, shape, or form their ability, because this is some of the best, most moving writing I've ever read in Star Trek. So many of the
Yeah.
dialogue lines have moved me beyond anything. I mean, we're talking like inner light level of moving.
Yeah,
Picard
yeah.
speeches all the time from everybody, and not so on the nose. Like when Tyler and Burnham are talking in the mess hall, I think it's either in gosh, is it in Choose Your Pain, or is it the episode after Choose Your Pain? But it's the one where she says, I'm hurt and I want to love. I'm
Yep.
angry and I want to trust.
Yep.
But there's still hope. What is this? And he says it's just being human. And it's
Yep.
just like, that is such beauty. And then to see them pull stuff from the first season, from the first episode, and lay it out on this table, and it makes sense. It's like, I agree that it would have behooved the show in some ways to have the Vok Tyler connection made in the scene with Laurel. But while he's sitting there listening, watching himself basically point for point doing the opposite of what he and his core, the prime Voke, wants, line by line, you can see how that would, to use a dumb phrase, it would trigger him into this, because it's like every single thing that his Messiah said, this, we stand for A, B, and C, and this guy is like, we are the opposite of A, B, and C, and it makes sense, and it's so natural and organic, and it's just amazing work done by the writing staff to make this thing fit together with such intricate parts and in such a natural way. I loved it. And then it goes to another one of my other points, which is, we've already covered it, but what Saru said when they beamed him on, we're all Starfleet, we live and die by Federation law. I mean, that is so Star Trekky, to borrow your phrase, Jeff. This show is Star Trek, and there's no way around it, no way to properly argue it's not. And lines like that are what a lot of us are here for, to be reminded of what we as a species, as a people, can do at our best as we live in some rough times. It's a great hope. It's a great beacon out there, and to have it back, and to have it current, and to have it meshing with the way that we view TV these days, I think is invaluable. It's beyond words.
All right. I'm going to move on because that was really great what you just said. So we're just going to leave it at that. Are you okay with that?
Oh, that I've covered it all. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Because that was really good. Jeff, can you follow that up?
I don't know if I can follow that up. I have a few things. I guess I can follow it up with one that stood out to me in this episode that I thought was very telling, was that I love that the teachings of Kahless are being used in opposite ways, in opposite universes. I thought that was a huge message. The fact that Mirror Voke brings up the teachings of Kahless as to the reasons why he's the leader of the Resistance. And I thought, knowing what we know about T'Kuvma and the rise of the unified Klingon Empire behind the teachings of Kahless, and starting a war against the Federation, and knowing that those same teachings could be used for good. To me, that in all of the episodes that we've seen of Discovery so far, that has really stood out to me as Star Trek social commentary. I think that this is almost a treatise on the various ways that religious teachings are used across the world today in our own life, and the way that some people can invoke the same teachings and use them for good, and other people can use them to quantify more evil and malicious agendas. It's a lot to think about, and it's way too much to cover on a short podcast like this one. But one thing I've always loved about Star Trek is the social commentary and the way it makes us think about the world. And no episode of Discovery has done that for me until now. This is the first one that I've really taken a message home from, and it's pretty significant. to me. I think that to be in an evil, quote unquote, evil universe and seeing teachings that are being used for what we thought was evil in our own universe being used for good, or what we perceive as good in an evil universe. It's a lot to process. So
No, that's really great insight, Jeff.
oh,
I'm really glad
Yeah.
we got all that depth out of it because it makes the mirror universe feel like a real place.
exactly.
Instead of just this like
Yes.
cartoonish world, you know, full
Exactly.
of bad guys.
Which is always pretty much what it's been. If you look back at the mirror universe, it's
Right.
almost been a source of amusement. Not, I hate to say it that way, but it's been, like you said, kind of cartoonish and exaggerated, as opposed to the Prime universe. And this brings a dose of reality into it to see what it's like on the other side of the mirror universe and see the struggles of the people who are being oppressed, and the fact that they're using the teachings that we thought were going to only be used for evil for the purposes of good, and to propagate their own struggles and to unify, as opposed to in the Prime universe they're using it to make it the pure Klingon, and now it's being used in the mirror universe to bring all of these species together is pretty significant.
And we wouldn't have known that if Burnham hadn't taken the objective to
Exactly.
disobey the command of the Emperor and go down to the planet.
Exactly.
What was her line there? Please don't make me destroy this union of hope and
Yeah. Coalition
goodness.
of Hope.
Yeah, it was beautiful and it worked out really well. I mean, that's a great insight, Jeff, because I've talked a lot about the dialogue that's really moved me, and so I've had, I haven't really thought about how I haven't found a huge social commentary piece yet. And now that you mention that, I realize that I've been getting a lot of meaning from, emotional context, and I haven't been noticing that I haven't been getting that social commentary, but it's very well done in this episode and a really high goal, I think.
Yeah, I definitely, I think we can all agree that this one definitely has the most Star Trek. I'm trying to think, Jeff. I think it was Lethe that was the one you said felt the most Star Trek, that had Sarek in it.
Yes.
The last time that really came up, I think. I'm not sure if there was another one after that where you said that,
No,
but
I think Lethe was the one.
we've gotten these. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to make a joke to lighten the mood. I was going to say, I guess I love the fact that Vulcans have goatees in the mirror universe. It's a thing.
It's perfect.
I love that.
Certainly great to see James Frain again as Sarek, and that was actually, that'll segue me into my notes, because we've kind of talked about pretty much everything.
Oh, well, I alluded to a cardinal sin earlier, by the way. That I guess I just throw that out there because it's part of my spin it again. So this frustrates me to no end, and they do this in so many shows and movies. You take a character like Michael Burnham, who over the course of the series has shown such strength and resolve in tough situations. Just take the fact that she was willing to betray a captain who she clearly loved and idolized, for what she felt was the greater good, right? For the good for Starfleet, the good for humanity, for, to put the Klingons in their place and stop a war. But now she can't bring herself to pull a trigger when she was faced with hard evidence. She's standing face to face with an enemy, and I don't care what she felt for Tyler. She knew without a shadow of a doubt that he was Vogue and that he had killed Culber, yet she couldn't even flip the stun switch and stun him. Instead, he gets the upper hand and almost kills her, which to me, and if she had overcome him in a physical altercation, I could have let it go. It just felt like a disservice to her character. And especially in the mirror universe, the fact that she was saved from an assassination attempt by a slave, it feels to me like in the mirror universe in the Terran Empire, that could be a really big negative check mark for her character and potentially bring more assassination attempts against her and jeopardize the mission.
Especially because in the previous episode, she just killed Connor.
Exactly. It just seemed like a bad choice in writing to me.
I mean, to play devil's advocate, though, she, earlier on in the day, in her worst day, galactic worst day ever, she was talking about him, he was telling her that she's his tether and she's head over heels in love with him. And then to have all that turned on its head in the course of, I mean, how much time do we think passed from when he attacked Mirror Voke until that? Like less than an hour, I think. It wasn't very much time, right? I mean,
It was not
pretty quick. So she look, and I think she doesn't make the greatest decisions all the time, because she continued to support him after the PTSD episode on the sarcophagus ship, which is more understandable. He's on a Klingon ship. But then when he's in the worker bee, it's like, this should not be that stressful. You're obviously under a lot of stress, way too much to be doing this. And she's still covering for him and trying to get him to go with her. So I think she's pretty emotionally compromised. I mean, I think that would happen if you, as a emotional being, are brought up and with never getting any education on how to deal with your emotions. I mean, it's just like, you don't have them. You don't have them. You don't have them.
I don't know.
Shock. And I mean,
I don't know.
All this.
There's also like that entire scene. She's basically like, she's getting her heart broken for the very first time. Like, you can see it on her face when Tyler's kind of revealing everything to her. Like, she knows she's lost him, and she's trying to deal with all of that emotion that she doesn't know how to deal with because she's raised as a Vulcan. So I mean, it's kind of understandable, but that still doesn't excuse like the writing.
well, it sounds like Jeff is not going to be convinced. I mean, no matter what we say,
it's not necessarily convincing me. I feel like the quote unquote woman in love who can't pull the trigger is just an overused trope to me, and I just didn't like the fact that was assigned to Michael Burnham, because you see it in movies and TV shows all the time that the woman is faced. She's got the upper hand against some guy who is confessing all of this stuff, and now she's faced with this overwhelming evidence. This guy's a creep and a jerk, and he's done horrible, terrible things, but her love for him makes it so she can't pull the trigger.
But it's the first time that she's ever been in love, and
when you put it that way, though, Jeff, you're starting to win me over.
I don't know, man. And the fact that
those words,
you know as well as I do, and all the other nerds out there in DiscoTrek land know that phaser has a little switch that switched it over to stun. She didn't have to kill him. All she had to do was disable him, and that would have been it. Because once he's made the change, and he's obviously now full-time Voke, you can tell he's speaking Klingon. He's Tyler's gone. Stun the sucker. Don't let him get the upper hand. Like, he's obviously kind of positioning and posturing himself where he's going to take the first opportunity to grab that phaser.
I'm going to stop you right there, because it's not that easy. It's not that easy when you have an emotional relationship with somebody who you thought was one person and they turn around and turn out to be somebody else. And I'm just going to tell you from my own personal experience.
I've been there.
I'm telling you from an experience of, I don't think you do. And it's triggering something that is a totally different, but this is someone that she trusted that turned into a predator. When that happens, it is not as easy as thinking to pull a trigger or put somebody on stun.
Fair enough.
Let me ask you guys something about Tyler Voke. Do you think he's redeemable at this point? If we could take Voke, Mirror Voke, bring him onto the ship, and somehow transfer Tyler's Voke part of his brain, which I understand is the brain itself, but put those memory engrams on Mirror Voke, and then just have Tyler become Tyler, would you guys want Ash Tyler on the show anymore as a protagonist?
I don't know. I don't think so.
He killed Colbert. It's hard
I don't think I could.
I don't think there's enough of Ash, which we talked about last week, the potential of this struggle with defining humanity. And is it going to be enough of Ash as an identity and his emotions for Burnham trying to overrule who he is as Voke? And at this point, it's completely confirmed that the body is Voke. Even though the body was turned into a human, the body is Voke. So that is Voke just turned into a human with this personality imposed or whatever.
But it is also confirmed that that personality was a real human being. I mean, you see Voke and Ash Tyler sitting right next to each other, lying on their operating tables in one of the flashbacks. I mean, so they're definitely two different people. So I mean, like, my point is that Ash Tyler's a fully born and bred human being who has a whole life of experience that he's drawing from. He might not have a body anymore, but I mean, he can transfer Data's program to another body.
I could never. And let me.
No.
This also, I mean, even if I try to align this with my own personal life, this is totally out of left field. But let me put it this way. I just ended a relationship with someone who I fought to find the Ash Tyler in, who I saw some of the Ash Tyler in, who has been Voke the whole time, and who is now making it very clear that he is Voke, and I will never, ever take that person back. So with that metaphor, like, I could never, ever advocate for having Burnham get back with Tyler. And that's even coming out of, one of my own spinning again. I really love that moment in the beginning with Tyler and Burnham where she's saying he reminds her of the good in everything, and he's saying that she's his tether. I thought that was such a beautiful, beautiful moment between those two people. But by the end of this, he is realized as Voke, and I don't think he's gonna come back from that. And no, I do not want to see Burnham back with him at this point.
Voke severed the tether that kept Ash Tyler hanging around.
You think he's gone into the ether at this point? Ash Tyler,
yeah.
that is.
I think Ash Tyler is gone. Ash Tyler's not coming back.
And even if he could, I don't think I would want him around either. I think I'm on board with. I mean, he's he's killed somebody.
If you had asked me last week, I was totally on board with, Annie talking about this and saying how, it would be interesting to see the storyline of the struggle between, what is a human and what is being human, and is there enough of Ash there? But after the transition this week, and then just aligning that with my own personal life and really thinking about it, no. I think that I dislike Ash Tyler more than I do Laurel at this point. But I mean, that's given that I thought, Laurel was a sexual assaulter, and she really isn't.
The show's got a lot of layers.
Yeah.
It's got so many.
Well, I'm in the same camp as all you guys. I can't possibly see a way that he can be redeemed, and I don't get personal. I don't talk much about my personal life on these shows, but I went through a situation where someone that I was with completely transformed before my eyes into something else, and I would never take that back either. I don't see how that character can possibly be redeemed, even if there was a way to separate them, the two of them, and give Ash his life back. I don't know. I don't think I would ever be unbiased against that person again.
I think that Burnham's demeanor towards him will change, of course. But back to the original point, I mean, I at least understand why she couldn't hit that button. And I didn't feel that it was a trope. And I don't know if that's because I'm a woman and the only woman here. But I just, what she went through in that small amount of time and what he was doing, I mean, he was there as Ash, and throughout that conversation, he completely turned to Voke. And he started that conversation saying that, and I'm not trying to convince you, Jeff. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying that you are. I'm just saying I don't know. I mean, when he spoke Klingon on the planet's surface down there and start to fight Vogue, that was a clear indication that there was something else there. That was a big tip off, and there was a lot of time to process that. But and I understand where you're coming from, and I'm not saying that you're wrong or I'm right. It just seemed like I would have liked to have seen the scene played out a little bit differently. I would rather have seen her prevail over him without the intervention of somebody else.
That scene happened so quick, though. It was like, it started out where he like grabs her face, says, "You're my tether. I love you." Like, there's nothing I wouldn't do for you. And not even 3 minutes later, he's ready to kill her. You know, like that, no time at all for her to process anything.
And he wasn't, I mean, the reality, like he didn't pose a physical threat until like that last second.
Right.
So look, having been in a similar position where someone turns out not to be who they are to you, I did not leave my house until I felt physically threatened. And we could go into a whole thing here about abusive relationships, which is not what this was because she didn't know who he was until then. But it's not something that you think about until you have to protect yourself. And I mean, she did pull it out, but she was just conflicted and in disbelief. And I don't know. I was okay with the moment. I mean, that's just what it's going to be. Jeff was not. I was. I like the fact that Mira Saru stepped in and saved her. And I think that is telling of that character relationship, even though this is a mirror universe of him. And I don't disagree that it could have different implications because it's a slave or whatnot. But let's just leave it at that. I think that we've kind of. Did you have anything else, Jeff?
Only that. Well, I have a bunch of little things, but I'm very glad that Tyler Vogt admitted to killing Culber, and now Stamets is off the hook. Thank you, so much, writers, for that. I was so worried that they were going to leave that open, and thank you to Tilly for standing up for Stamets and insisting that he could not possibly have done that, and hopefully convincing Saru that was the case. But thankfully, we also got Tyler Vogt's confession that he was the one that did it.
Yeah.
Well, I thought Tilly was saying that it wasn't him, as in like he wasn't in control of his own actions.
Oh, it was, but she was at least trying to plead the case that he wouldn't have done that. You know, so I was glad to see that, and so yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Well,
Tilly in general, I forgot to mention, sorry, Tilly in general, this episode, as we said before, was amazing.
Yes.
She was.
Her role was still somewhat minor compared to last week, you know. But she, again, that confidence that she portrays, she's just really coming into her own, and that's what's like won her over in my heart, for sure.
It was more minor, but it was more meaningful, I think, in this episode.
Well, last week was like personality and just like Tilly being awesome as an awesome person, and we loved seeing, you know, Captain Killy and the transition. And this week was, like you said, Jeff, more, you know, more instrumental into completing the mission, because she was the science whiz this week.
Yeah, she was sciencing.
I do hope we get more Captain Killy lines, though.
I'm sure we'll see more. I mean, at this point, we're going to be there at least for a few more episodes, if not the rest of the season. So, I mean, I think we've kind of given props to freaking everybody. I just wanted to revisit the writer, Lisa Randolph, because this was just the writing in this. And I mean, it's not just Lisa, it's everyone else, but damn. Oh, that was bad. Can I say damn?
Yes, you can say damn.
That's okay.
Yes, perfectly fine.
Just phenomenally well written. And the more that I watched it, the more that I realized that. So again, despite the fact that I was a little underwhelmed by the reveals, the content in this episode, the amount of story, the amount of character interaction and development that we got. And we've already said it, but Sonequa Martin Green's performance, as well as Shazad Latif's performance, were really the standout for me. It's too bad Star Trek doesn't win awards,
Yeah, really.
like Emmys and whatnot.
They might this year.
I would love that. I hope this would be Star Trek's year for that, because it just continues to blow everyone away. I think from fan reaction that I've seen online, Seth, you said you saw quite a bit of criticism, constructive criticism, but it seems like this episode is a lot of people's favorite, and I haven't been doing my favorite episode poll recently. I'll have to start that again, but it's tough. I enjoyed the pace of last week's episode, but again, I'm in that boat of Culber, so it's hard to say with a favorite episode at this point. But overall, I think it was Wilson Cruz that had said on After Trek last week that it keeps going, like this is the pace now. So apparently we're going to get another really phenomenal episode next week up until the end, which is exciting, and I'm looking forward to that. So I guess any final comments about the episode, Marty?
No, I think I've said everything I need to say about it.
All right, Seth, what about you?
Yeah, I think I too have definitely taken my turn on this one.
All right, Jeff?
I think I have 7 or 8 more things. No, I'm just kidding. I'm good.
All right. I think we've said everything that we can say for an episode that had this much in it. Good job, guys.
This was fun.
Yeah, I was not sure how we would touch on everything that I wanted to touch on, and I think that we actually did. I have to props to Marty for reading my mind tonight, because
you're welcome.
So many of the points that I wanted to make, so that made it easy on me. So I guess since we're so long, we're not going to get to our Facebook comments. We will try to get back to those with the rest of the Discovery episodes coming. But let's let everyone know where they can find us online in case they want to continue the conversation. Seth, where can people find you?
Well, I've got a kind of my Twitter account is @TheRealAlien2, and the one I use more often, my Trek account, is @FirstTrek.
Alrighty, and Marty, how about you?
You can find me in the unofficial STLV Facebook group, as well as @TimeTravelMarty on Twitter.
Oh, I like that handle. All right, Jeff, where can we find you?
Well, in the same place that you can find Marty and yourself, Heather, in the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas Convention Facebook group, and I am Warp Factor Jeff on Twitter.
All right, I am LLA Posper on Twitter. And yes, as everyone has already said, we are in the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas Facebook group. That is where you will find our weekly post where you can comment and enter to win a chance to pop on the show. We are Disco_Trek on Twitter, and the network is Tricorder Show. You can find everyone on the tricordertransmissions.com. So thank you guys so much for another great discussion. I had a lot of fun, and we will be back next week to talk about what I'm sure will be another phenomenal episode of Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Well, live long and prosper, everybody.